Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Well, the Vasyl Lomachenko Nicholas Walters tape is making the rounds here on YouTube. As of 24 hours ago, I had a copy in my favorites folder here. I would encourage you to look at it if it's still posted, right? People are talking about whether Lomachenko is the best in the sport pound for pound. This is what happens after a great fighter, and Lomachenko is a two-time Olympic gold medalist, puts on a great performance, and it is a great performance. Let me just rant a little bit for the next, 2 minutes or so, knowing me, maybe longer than 2 minutes, right, about my thoughts on the best pound for pound. Now, let me just point out that boxing is more than a sport. It's a conversation, right? When you sit down with someone who's into boxing and you start talking about boxing, you're going to find out that while you agree on some things, you disagree on many things, right? Doesn't make one of you right, doesn't make one of you wrong. The sport is set up so we can talk about fighters from different eras and talk about their legacies and talk about the controversies in their career, right? I have a friend who remains convinced that Marvin Hagler, who ran through the middleweight division in the 1980s, beat Ray Leonard, right? Understand that decision was controversial. Certainly, Marvin Hagler had a much better case that he won that fight than, let's say, Andre Ward does of claiming his win over Sergei Kovalev, right? In that fight, Hagler never goes down. If you look at the body punches in that fight, and if you score the fight and you count the body punches, you really have to wonder what the deal was, right? Also, Marvin starts the fight, right, fighting in the wrong stance for 2 rounds, right? He comes out, he tries to change stances. He normally fought as a southpaw. He comes out fighting as a righty for 2 rounds against Ray Leonard. And of course you wonder, gee, did Marvin throw the fight away, right? I have another friend who firmly believes that Joe Frazier beat Ali all 3 times, right? Just like there's a group out there, and I belong to this group, who believes that Manny Pacquiao never beat Juan Manuel Marquez. I can tell you, for me personally, being a kid in the 1970s, I'm still mystified as to why one of the best pure boxers in his prime I ever saw, Jimmy Young, isn't more highly regarded. Young officially beat George Foreman. This is in the 70s, right? When Foreman's in his prime, he officially beats George Foreman, although Foreman's people have an argument in that fight. He officially beats Ron Lyle. Unofficially, I see no way that he lost to Muhammad Ali. It's one of the best opponents against Ali I saw in my life. And of course, he loses by split decision to Ken Norton in a fight where the referee, Carlos Padilla, said, hey, if I had a vote, I would have gone to Jimmy Young, right? I would have voted with Young. So that's Young facing boxing royalty in the 70s. Foreman, Lyle, Ali, and Norton. And not losing in clear-cut fashion, in my opinion, against any of them. Well, let's talk about the best pound for pound right now, right? Again, it's a conversation. I'm not going to name one person, but let me just say this. There is a fighter out there who's had a spectacular career, unbeaten, who doesn't have an Orlando Salido moment, who doesn't have a Sergei Kovalev moment, who doesn't have, and this guy's unique because he's the moment on multiple great fighters, who doesn't have a Darnell Boone moment, right? Yes, Ward, yes, Kovalev, yes, Adonis Stevenson, right? Doesn't have a Kasim Uma moment. Doesn't have a George Groves moment. right? Doesn't have a portion of a fight where he looks as tired as Chocolatito Roman Gonzalez looked in the closing rounds against Carlos Cuadras, who did close the gap significantly. Right? A fighter who doesn't have a Dmitry Pirog moment. And that fighter is Terence Crawford. Right? Understand, we're not going to agree on who's the best in the sport pound for pound. But you kind of know who's in the conversation. Right? Let me say this, though. People get a little carried away with the pound for pound list. Understand. The list was really created for Sugar Ray Robinson at a time when the heavyweight champion really ruled the roost. When we have a pound for pound discussion, right, the heavyweights are really excluded. Because the whole point of the pound for pound discussion was to look at headliners other than heavyweights. So the nature of the conversation is a little bit tilted, isn't it? Right? And let me just say, too, that ultimately, styles make fights, because Ray Robinson had a problem with the kind of fighter, and we'll go into it, Nicholas Walters is. Right? A big guy who's strong in the pocket, who won't back up, who's coming forward. Doesn't that describe the Raging Bull, Jake LaMotta? Doesn't that describe Randy Turpin? Let me say this. Turpin's an interesting person in history because while, sure, Ray Robinson dominated the Raging Bull in some fights, right? The last fight is boxing legend, right? Understand that Turpin rematch. We're hearing that Ray Robinson was out golfing. He didn't prepare for the first Turpin fight. The Turpin rematch, an eagerly anticipated rematch. Ray Robinson's having all kinds of problems, folks. All kinds of problems. Now, knockouts cause amnesia. History seems to have forgotten the problems Ray Robinson's having before Ray Robinson ends that fight. Of course, Gene Fullmer beats Ray Robinson. Now, I know Ray Robinson has the famous anchor punch that he uses to knock out Gene Fullmer in one of the fights. But understand, Fullmer has stretches against Ray Robinson. Fullmer's another guy who's like Nicholas Walters. Didn't back up. Tough guy. Came forward. Held his ground. Right? Forced you into corners. Forced you up against the ropes. Legend has it that it's Gene Fullmer who beats up Benny the Kid Parrott. Right before the fight where he ultimately dies. Well, understand, Ray Robinson had a problem with the Gene Fullmers of the world. Now, Vasyl Lomachenko looked great. Looked great against Nicholas Walters. Looked spectacular against Nicholas Walters. Right? But people need to realize he didn't look so great against Orlando Salido. They also need to realize that Walters is, let's coin a phrase here, pocket dependent. Right? Walters is flat-footed. Let's talk styles for a moment. Walters is flat-footed. Understand, flat-footed guys don't move as well as guys who operate off the balls of their feet. Right? They just don't. Walters is flat-footed. He's in the pocket. He really needs for you to be in the pocket. He's pocket dependent. Now, my point to you is you have guys who move so well around the ring that you're going to have a hard time even creating a pocket. As good as Vasyl Lomachenko looked here, one wonders if he would look remotely as good against Manny Pacquiao. Understand, Pacquiao You cannot look at the Walters fight, where Walters is tethered to the canvas, and draw conclusions on how Vasyl Lomachenko would do against Manny Pacquiao. Right? Because Manny Pacquiao is going to be moving around the ring. Understand, the real gift Manny has isn't so much the devastatingly straight left hand, it's the legendary foot speed. Pacquiao moves around the ring. He's jumping around the ring. Right? He moves at least as well as Orlando Salido, who beat Lomachenko. Right? So if Lomachenko's coming forward, he's fighting a ghost in fighting Manny Pacquiao. Right? Pacquiao's going to be jumping around the ring. Let's go one step further. Right? Nicholas Walters has a lot of power, but it's local. Right? Another phrase we'll coin. It's local power. Walters hurts you when you stand next to him. Right? Manny Pacquiao has that David Haye type ring coverage. Right? The big shots are coming from the area code next to yours. The guy's far away. You see Manny, he's far away. Suddenly, he's hitting you with shots from distance. Let me name another guy who we're not going to put on the pound for pound list, right? Most people don't. But yet, to me, he's one of the toughest matchups in the sport. And that's Shawn Porter. Same type thing. He's fighting Paulie Malignaggi. Malignaggi has a good jab. Shawn Porter moves so well. He's sudden. That Malignaggi, who normally a jab creates some space. Right? So Malignaggi's a guy who, when you watch Malignaggi fights, usually he has some space to operate. The problem is Shawn Porter throws a bomb from outside Malignaggi's comfort zone. Right? And when Porter lands, he can then charge in. And unlike Nicholas Walters, who cannot fight backing up, right, Shawn Porter can. So, Shawn Porter makes Adrian Broner look immobile because Porter's on his back foot. This is the same Shawn Porter who's diving inside. Right, diving inside on Kell Brook, on Keith Thurman. Right, keep in mind too, when we're talking about skills, and you're talking about the best pound for pound, understand there are always people the public's not talking about, who are among the very best in boxing. Right? This cruiserweight champion. Now, I'm not talking about Tony Bellew, right? This cruiserweight champion, Usyk. You know, something just tells me this guy can run through the heavyweight division. Right? This guy, wow. He can fight you on his front foot. He can fight you on his back foot. He moves very well. He carries the weight. He has power. Right? So let's just say this. When it comes to the best pound for pound, right? Really, it's a conversation. We're going to name people like Andre Ward, who belongs on this list. Sergey Kovalev, who belongs on this list. Vasyl Lomachenko, who belongs on this list. Gennady Golovkin, who belongs on this list. Right? Roman Gonzalez, who belongs on this list. Usyk, who belongs on this list. Let's not sleep on Manny Pacquiao. Got news for you. Pacquiao's not the first person to lose to Floyd Mayweather. Right? Let's not sleep on Shawn Porter. Let's go beyond official decisions. I personally thought Shawn Porter beat Keith Thurman. Right? Beat him. Right? For me personally, the most intriguing set of skills The most intriguing set of skills. The guy who, when I'm looking at film and this guy has his A game going, it's astonishing to watch. That's the guy who looked bad, quite frankly, against George Groves. More importantly, I didn't think he looked good in his last fight against Medina. Go back a few years, I didn't think he looked good in his fight against Wilczewski. But James DeGale, nobody shifts better from righty to lefty than DeGale. Let's just say as we discuss the pound-for-pound list, and by we, I'm just talking about the boxing hardcore community. If one of you was sitting next to me in a bar and we were just talking about the best in the sport pound-for-pound, let's say there'd be a few names we'd be mentioning, right? Let me say this about Terence Crawford, too, right? While Crawford's a craftsman, while he certainly did a hell of a lot better than I thought he would against Victor Postal, right? Let me concede that point here online if I haven't already, right? In fact, I believe I have multiple times. You know, I do wonder about how fast he is, right? Manny Pacquiao, I know a lot of people are saying, hey, Pacquiao, he's still in the sport, he's in his 30s, right? He's too left-hand dominant. That right can't land from distance, right? But wow. You know, I do wonder if Crawford has the reflexes to keep up with Manny Pacquiao. Yeah. A lot of these fights come down to the odds involved. Let's just say, as you think pound for pound, just ask yourself the follow-up question. Right? You're going to say pound for pound. Right? Then say to yourself, okay, well, given that Ray Robinson had problems with Randy Turpin's fight style, what problems would the guy we're putting on the pound for pound have with the fight style of Manny Pacquiao, Sean Porter, right? Guys like that. Now, let's talk about this fight. 17 minutes in. I'll keep the rest of the video short. You know, Walters can't fight backing up. I know to the boxing public, this was a fight between two unbeatens. But there's a talent gap between these two guys. Right? Walters can't fight backing up. That fact by itself made him extremely vulnerable to a Vasyl Lomachenko who has a lot of lateral movement, who has a lot of foot speed. Right? Walters was hoping Vasyl Lomachenko would stay in the pocket right in front of him so he could dole out punishment. Let me tell you, the Jason Sosa film is disturbing because Sosa's right in front of Nicholas Walters and Walters can't catch up with him. Officially, that fight's a draw. Sosa's going around saying, look, I beat Walters. Let's just say one thing is clear. Right? Walters' punch pattern is such that a high-level technician, that's who Sosa is, that's who Lomachenko is, a high-level technician can stand in front of him and can block the shots. If Walters were to have fought Floyd Mayweather, let's remember, Mayweather used to be lighter than the weight class in which these two fought, right? Mayweather was champion in a range of weight classes. Don't just look at Mayweather at middleweight and junior middle, right? Excuse me, at welterweight and junior middle. You should look at Mayweather at the entire range, right? You should look at Manny Pacquiao over the entire range. I get the feeling Mayweather, who when he was younger did move very well. Mayweather really is a freak athlete who's also a master technician. But understand, if Mayweather wanted to fight Nicholas Walters from the pocket, he'd be able to do so. Right? Because Walters only throws a certain set of punches. So you'll notice in this fight, and it's breathtaking, right? Walters tries to throw a short left to the body. Now he's facing a southpaw, at least that's what they tell us. But yet Lomachenko always has his elbow down there. He's always protecting his kidneys, isn't he? Walters can't slip the punch in. It's even worse than that. Lomachenko, the southpaw, toward the end of the fight, and this is when Walters pulls the plug, starts teeing off on his right hand, right? Walters is like this. Lomachenko's over here. He's over Walters' left shoulder. And Lomachenko starts leaning in with his right hand. Now, what I want people to do, as you look at the film of the last 2 rounds in particular, is to understand that that right hand, and it's bothering the hell out of Nicholas Walters, the right hand that Lomachenko is leaning in and throwing, that's his non-dominant hand, folks. That's the level of skill you're watching here. Right? Understand, as this fight goes along, Lomachenko was doing the Floyd Mayweather thing of changing his style based on his opponent. And Lomachenko reaches the point where he understands that he does things better from a non-dominant stance. And against one of the biggest punchers in the entire sport, Lomachenko not only goes non-dominant hand, but then is jumping inside on Nicholas Walters, who has a lethal left hook. Right? Walters is completely dominated. Now, what I want people to think about are just mindsets for a moment. Right? Understand that Nicholas Walters really has a Goliath mindset, we'll call it. Right? Some would say a bully mindset. Right? This is the mindset of a hunter. This is a guy who's accustomed to dominating. Right? A lot of Walters' opponents, even skilled guys, elite guys like Nino Denier, felt his power, started backing up. Right? Felt his power, decided, you know what, that's the end of this fight. I'm not going to deal with this level of power. Right? But understand the problem with bullies. The opponent needs to buy into the construct. Right? In actuality, bullies are like relief pitchers in baseball. They do 2 or 3 things well, right? They have that great pitch, split-fingered fastball or whatever it is, right? They have a good combination, curveball and fastball. Think of Rollis Chapman, right? They do 2 or 3 things brilliantly well. And the goal is to have the opponent feel overwhelmed, right? To have the opponent emotionally overwhelmed to the point where the opponent reaches the conclusion that, gee, I just can't beat this guy. Right? This 100-mile-an-hour fastball is just too overpowering. I'm going to close my eyes and swing. Right? It's, this guy, throws your game off. Now, I believe that Lomachenko is a different mindset. Right? He has that Juan Manuel Marquez, Floyd Mayweather mindset. In boxing, we call these guys technicians. Right? Think about the engineer you know in your life who views everything as math, as a series of equations. Understand, with technicians, and I'm serious about this, right? Some of my closest friends are engineers. I have no idea how that worked out, but some of them are engineers, right? And when you're dealing with the person for whom everything is math, everything is an equation. I don't think Lomachenko was fighting an individual in his eyes. I think Lomachenko was fighting a series of math problems. Right? I think Lomachenko entered the ring. I believe it's the same thing with Juan Manuel Marquez. Right? I saw Juan Manuel Marquez against Juan Diaz. And Marquez is there looking at Diaz, right? Even gets dropped in the fight. He's facing heavy fire. Then the light goes on, right? Marquez realizes, you know what? Diaz can't block an uppercut. Marquez starts throwing uppercuts with both hands. That's the way technicians think. Right? I believe Marquez against Manny Pacquiao. As he hits the canvas multiple times the first fight, I think Marquez is thinking to himself, because again, this is the technician's standpoint. You know, how did he get that left hand in? Didn't I have that blocked? I need to watch for that left hand. I think that's the way technicians think. So while Nicholas Walters is intimidating to many opponents, right? Lomachenko's just in there knowing, okay, he can't back up. I'm going to charge in here. Right? He won't be able to defend himself. You know, all right, that left hook to the body, he throws it well when you're up close to him. I'm just not going to be that close to him. I'm going to move away from him. That dangerous right cross that he hits opponents with, he can only do it at these angles. I'm not going to be in that position. Right? Understand, when you're watching a technician, it's the tip of the iceberg. The fight looks dull at times. Right? I keep hearing Floyd Mayweather fights look dull. The reason they look dull is that the technician is engaging in defense before punches are even thrown. Because at the highest level, the game is about angles. So a Floyd Mayweather will be fighting a Marcus Maidana. And he'll know, Maidana can't hit me at these angles. So he'll be in certain places. He'll even be with his back up against the ropes with Maidana right in front of him. And he'll be able to take away Maidana's best punches. So then as you watch the fight, you're saying, man, what's wrong? How come I'm not seeing Maidana's best punches? How come he's not doing what he did? How come Nicholas Walters is not doing what he did against Nonito Donaire? And it's because Vasyl Lomachenko has taken away those angles. So, understand, when you hit Goliath in the mouth, right? When you have a Sonny Liston unable to catch up with you because you're just too fast for him, too much foot speed, right? You're going to have a situation where a guy gives up his unbeaten streak, in this case for Walters, or gives up his heavyweight title, in the case of Sonny Liston, on the stool. Right? Guys aren't going to fight to the end. Right? There's a lot of pride involved in the sport of boxing. One wonders if Nicholas Walters ever had a guy diving in on his left side with hard right hands the way Lomachenko did. It must have been really humbling for him to realize that Lomachenko was a southpaw and he's diving in with hard right hands. Right? Think about it. Right? Just like Sonny Liston. Right? Walters' opponent was just too fast for him, too fluid for him, too elusive for him. right? So, Nicholas Walters, who I don't believe was severely injured physically, I believe he was devastated emotionally, right? Nicholas Walters understood we're reaching the part of the fight where the other guy's hand speed is going to start to take over, right? Oscar De La Hoya, Manny Pacquiao, same type thing, where Oscar looked terrible against Manny Pacquiao, and then understood that Pacquiao's hand speed was still going to be there the next round, right? Understood his own tank was on E, right? Boxing has an emotional component to it, has a psychological component to it, right? So I know many people now are saying, oh, Walters quit, Walters quit. Walters quit after 2 of the worst rounds of his life. Walters quit because Lomachenko was making adjustments throughout the fight and had reached the point where he knew to jump in with power shots, to lead with power shots with his non-dominant hand up close. Right? So I don't blame Walters for pulling the plug. Understand, that's the extent to which he was undressed. So to sum up, yes, Vasyl Lomachenko belongs in the conversation as one of the best pound for pound. But I don't believe we in boxing right now have one person who we could all point to and agree upon is the best pound for pound, right? I believe it's a conversation. I believe record-wise the best case is probably Terence Crawford, right? But I think most of us understand that Crawford hasn't exactly been fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, right? Like they did in the 1980s, right? Andre Ward, I think the fact that Vasyl Lomachenko, Roy Jones Jr., right? Guys who have been on the pound for pound list, Olympic gold medalists, feel that he lost the Kovalev fight. I don't think he has an airtight case for being the best pound for pound, right? Canelo, when you get undressed like you did by Floyd Mayweather, right? And when, to me, some of the fights you've had have been close, on the scorecards even, right? Let's remember the Erislandy Lara scoring. When the CompuBox numbers don't favor you. In fights like the Austin Trout fight, let's just say your case for pound really does require that you take on and beat Gennady Golovkin, right? Those two guys have unfinished business, right? Danny Jacobs, KO'd by Dmitry Pirog. You can't be the best pound for pound when people are wondering if you're the best in your division, right? It really has to be the kind of thing where you're so dominant in your division, so dominant, that we then start comparing you to other divisions. I can't look at middleweight, see Golovkin, right? See Canelo, who claims he's too light for 154. Okay, well, that puts him back at 160. See Danny Jacobs and pick any of those guys as the best for pound, right? Roman Gonzalez, I understand. Carlos Quadros wasn't in his weight class. He jumped 2 weight classes. He has a very strong argument for the best in the sport pound for pound. But let's just say that Quadros fight, just like the Andre Ward-Kovalev fight, I thought Gonzalez won the fight. But let's just say at the end of that fight, Gonzalez was lucky there wasn't 2 extra rounds in that fight, right? I don't believe that's the fight you want to have before saying, I rest my case, I'm the best pound for pound. So let's enjoy the great seats we have. Let's enjoy this moment in boxing, right? You have a lot of legitimate contenders for the best in the sport pound for pound. right? Let's sit back and see if any of these guys puts the cherry on the sundae, right? Ward would have, had he dominated Kovalev. 114, 113. All three, keep in mind, no judge has Ward winning the fight by 2 rounds. Right, none. Right? That's a little bit too close, right? To rest your case right here. Right? I think the jury's still out. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.